All right, are we ready for a roll call?
I'm good to go.
Peter Calandrella,
Is present.
Isaac Carmignani, Isaac,
That.
You going upstairs for that?
No, not for this one.
You going upstairs? What are you-
I can move.
Somebody need,
Carmignani, can you please,
Yeah, I can see him.
yeah, we saw him a moment ago.
I can still see him in the bottom. He's putting his thumbs up.
Okay, all right,
See.
all right. Okay, Isaac, I don't know, there's something wrong with your sound, but I can see you. Thank you. Janelle Chacon, April Chapman, Deborah Dillingham, Natalie Green Giles. May I ask everyone to remain on mute except when they are speaking? Michael Kraft,
Here.
Vanessa Leong,
here.
thank you. Gary Lennon,
Matt,
John
can you
Matter.
bring me my charger.
Fix at 4:30.
This went early.
Donald Nesbitt,
The one I just disconnected.
Lindsay Oates,
Present.
Kathy Park Price. Thank you. Lori Podvesker, Shannon Waite. All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, should I just get started? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna get started. I would like to echo what Alex said, if folks can put their mics on mute, so we can hear everyone better, that would be very helpful. Okay.
Want the door shut?
Yeah, you can close. Thanks, Matt.
Awesome. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome to the second virtual board meeting. Alex just called roll. We have a quorum. Similar to last meeting, when we take votes, we will call roll for each vote so that all folks can be easily tallied. So just remember to take your mic off of mute when Alex calls your name to place your vote. Okay, the first order of business is calendar item 1, noting the minutes of the meeting of the Board of Retirement held on March 30th, 2020. The minutes have been previously provided to the board by email and on the SharePoint site. May I have a motion to consider the minutes from the March 30th board meeting? Please raise your hand and state your name.
So, Peter Cowan.
Gary, second.
Thank you. We are going to call each trustee's name. Please indicate whether you are in favor, oppose, or abstain. Alex, can you please call the roll?
Peter Calandrella. Peter Calandrella. I'm sorry, Peter, I saw that you went off mute for a moment, but we didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, approved. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, perfect. Isaac Carmignani. Isaac Carmignani. Isaac, I think we cannot hear your sound. Hi, Deb.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I don't know how to turn mine off, actually.
Well, there should be controls in the bottom part of the screen. When you move your cursor, some controls will appear. The first one on the left should be the mute button. Isaac? All right. Janelle Chacon.
Approved.
Thank you. I'm taking votes, Deb, to approve the minutes of the last board meeting. And you're next, Deb. Thank you. Natalie Green-Giles.
Yes, in favor.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
Approve.
Thank you. Vanessa Leung.
Approve.
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
Approved.
Thank you. John Maderick.
Approve.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates. Oh, Donald is here. Yes, Donald. Hi. Donald, can you hear us? All right. Kathy Park Price. Thank you. And that's it for all present.
All right, excellent. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's update. Sandy, would you like to share any remarks with us tonight?
Thanks, Lindsay. So the COVID-19 pandemic has been pretty tough on members and staff and our extended families. You know, we've experienced losses which will be with us for some time, but we have adapted remarkably to our circumstances, with staff rapidly acclimatizing to remote work and being very productive. I distributed the most recent weekly productivity analysis a few days ago. We are not only maintaining staff productivity, but have surmounted some significant challenges while working to keep members informed. We have largely solved difficulties experienced in the implementation of remote call center activities, which was a significant challenge. And BERS staff has continued to counsel members and respond to their needs and inquiries via phone, via email, and via post. In addition to the operations reports, which we recently posted, an analysis of member survey work that we continue to pursue can be accessed on the SharePoint site. You should expect a formal presentation in this material at the May Board of Trustees meeting, but I'd encourage you to review this. Tonight, you'll be presented with two key proposals that are important to the operations of BERS: the investment policy statement and the fiscal 2021 budget. The fiscal 2021 budget proposal responds to a citywide call by the mayor to reduce expenditures. Proposed budget will reduce our spending while still allowing us to pursue systems improvements, which we have begun with the Velocity Project, improve operations, establish a procurement department, improve membership services where we can, while keeping headcount flat. This does mean that we will not be able to address some inadequacies that we or some of the many independent auditors that have reviewed our operations identified. But we expect this to be only a delay in those efforts. The final vote on the budget will be at the May Board of Trustees meeting, and you'll be hearing more about the budget later. The investment policy statement is the product of our investment strategy staff, our investment consultants, and the dedicated work of a special committee of trustees that has been meeting on this subject for the last few months. The IPS is a foundational document that helps guide our investment decision-making. It's a very important thing we're voting on tonight. And on the subject of investments, you will be receiving personal sign-in credentials to our investment book of record system, CAISA. If not already, very soon. Antonio Rodriguez will be sending this out. The implementation of this system and other improvements being made by Antonio and his team are significantly improving our ability to know how our investments are performing on a timely basis. We're building an investment strategy department that rivals the best supported systems in the industry, and you will be hearing more about this during the meeting. Just a quick update on 55-1. Our efforts to rebuild the network there and populate our new office space continues to move forward, although halted given the current conditions. And we are embarking on a plan to change the configuration there to increase distancing and increase protections for staff and members at both 55 Water and 65 Court Street. These are ongoing projects that we hope to accomplish before repopulating those offices. Finally, I previously distributed information about the mid-May online trustee educational series sponsored by the National Council of Public Employees Retirement Systems and CPERS. The National Accredited Fiduciary 4-module program will be offered via webinar in 3-hour sessions, noon to 3 p.m. over 4 days, May 19th, 22nd, 26th, and 29th. We have had trustees sign up for this already and would be happy to assist anyone who would like to participate. And that's it. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Sandy. The next items on this afternoon's agenda are calendar items 2 through 17, the ordinary business of BERS.
Hey, Lindsay, before we get there, I just have a question for Sandy really quick.
Of course.
So in response to, obviously with the new layout of the office and response to COVID and trying to get some adequate distancing, I imagine you don't have a full answer, but do you anticipate there being now a challenge with space because, now you need to find additional space within already space that you've already found? And does that mean that you're even weighing the fact that some individuals may have to go virtual or not? Like, are you weighing all those options right now?
Yes, and it's multidimensional, Gary, as you suggested. We have to consider what the probability is that remote work will be more of a permanent possibility for us. I mean, it's not clear to me that the city would agree isn't the word, but organize around a permanent portion of our staff being remote. It's unclear. We are lucky, I would say, that our office space at 55 Water is highly adaptable, and we've already looked at establishing greater distances between individual workstations. We are contracting out the implementation of higher barriers where we can implement them. And just to remind people who haven't seen 55 Water office space, we have a lot more space there than 65 Court, and moving as much of our staff to 55 Water as possible, as fast as possible, will go a long way to leaving the shoulder to shoulder office compression at 65 Court, and we're going to press ahead as hard as we can to get that done. And I would also say that at 65 Court, we fully expect to change the layout of that configuration on the 16th floor. It's very crowded for membership services, and we're going to have to take up more space for member visits, and we will likely eliminate drop-in visits completely, just to make sure that we don't have overwhelming crowds there that on occasionally we do.
All right, thank you. And it would be great just to get those updates going forward. As I imagine, it's ever evolving. So I'm just interested to see how we're moving that, as I'm sure everyone in all our organizations. Thanks.
I would like to acknowledge that Shannon Waite has joined the meeting. Welcome, Shannon. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Sandy?
Sandy, it's Peter Calandrell. I just had a quick question along the lines of what Gary was asking. Understanding that obviously this is an ever-changing situation, and we really don't know where we are going. Are you working with the mayor's office as far as trying to implement the plan? I mean, we hear day to day what the mayor and then we'll hear what the governor would like as far as what businesses are going to do as far as formulating a plan. Is that something that is being done?
Well, I wouldn't say we're coordinating with the mayor's office. We are sharing our plans with the DOE, specifically Tomas Hanna, who I was informed was organizing their plan for DOE space, and we will work with them. I would say, it's still early on. I mean, we've put together a group of staff that will look at this. We have a building manager that we recently hired, Justin Mui, who will be the implementer of these changes. So it's early on, Peter, but I believe we've got a perspective on what we need to do. And as I said earlier, we were lucky. The fact that we have 55 water is a significant resource, not only for us, but also for DOE. I mean, I fully expect that we will be offering space to DOE at 55 water, and we can accommodate some incremental.
Thank you.
If it's helpful on my side, just from the DOE, the 65 Court Street perspective, I believe that, we will be taking our guidance from DOHMH, City Hall, and the governor's office around how to proceed with reoccupying all of our buildings. And so I think the DOE, I can say, is certainly going to be coordinating and following the guidance of all of our public health partners.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And then Lindsay, a follow-up to that. So do you imagine that, well, this is the assumption, there are going to be some, while we're in a space where we're looking to save money, there are going to be some financial implications in us trying to reconfigure our spaces that we'll need to, just be aware of going forward as well for both the DOE and BERS as well.
Yes. And I mean, the PPE, the personal protective equipment, face masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectant for cleaning, all of those things in theory are eligible for federal emergency funding sources. So I think there's only so much we can do with the existing building space that we have. And obviously in New York City, a lot of our space in all types of offices are open concept, which is, I will say I don't sit 6 feet apart from the person who sits in the cube next to me. So there's going to be a lot of questions that I think we're going to have to work through.
Great. Thank you.
Lindsay, can I just ask, I have been to 55 Water and there is a lot of space. So I think we're lucky that we made that move to 55 Water. I have a question though, for the Brooklyn office where you said there's not going to be drop-in anymore. Will there be a video option like WebEx or FaceTime where you can actually have face-to-face contact with the members, which makes it, easy and hard, but I think it would be an advantage to have that face-to-face contact with the members if we could do it.
We'll still have face-to-face with members with appointments, just no walk-ins. They'll come in for appointments, counselors.
Appointments.
Yeah.
And until we can do that?
Well, right now we're doing phone counseling right now for all our members. So I'm sure going forward, that's still be an option for members to call in for counselors.
Okay, but do you have any sort of video option or no?
In development, not yet.
Okay, so you're working on something.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to acknowledge April Chapman has joined the meeting. Thank you, April. Hi, welcome.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm going to continue. Okay, so we are now going to be discussing calendar items 2 through 17, the ordinary business of BERS. Is there a motion to consider calendar items 2 through 17? Thank you, Deb. Any other second?
Second, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Alex, can you tell us about the ordinary business of BERS, please?
Certainly, these are all the retirements, death benefits, and refunds that have been processed since the last meeting of this board.
Thank you, Alex. We will now vote on these items. We are going to call each trustee's name and indicate, please, whether you are in favor, oppose, or abstain. Don't forget to take your mic off of mute. Thank you.
Calandrella?
In favor.
Isaac Carmignani?
I hope this works. In favor?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Isaac. Janelle Chacon?
In favor.
Thank you. April Chapman?
In favor.
Thank you. Deborah Dillingham?
In favor?
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles?
In favor.
Thank you. Michael Kraft?
In favor.
Thank you. Vanessa Leon?
In favor.
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
In favor.
Thank you. John Maderick.
In favor.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
In favor.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
In favor.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price.
I think I'll abstain on the vote.
Okay. Okay, we can hear you, but just barely. The volume is very low. But I heard that you are abstaining. Thank you. Shannon Waite.
In favor.
Thank you, Shannon. That's everyone.
Great, thank you. The next item on our agenda is calendar item 18, review of the fiscal year 2021 administrative budget. Can I have a motion to discuss, please? Thank you. I see Gary, second. I see John. Daniel, can you please tell us about the budget?
Sure, Lindsay, thank you. So as Sandy said earlier, we were asked to reduce our budget by about 4% for FY21. So we try to do this in a way that wouldn't impact members significantly. So that we are going to do their pay. We're reducing overtime considerably going forward, as well as temporary staff. We've cut our travel costs quite significantly as well. Some details on numbers. Petra?
Hello?
Did we lose audio?
Now hear you, Chitra. Welcome.
Okay, hi. Sorry, hi, thanks, Daniel. Okay, I would like to go over the fiscal year 21 budget. The total budget request for fiscal year 21 stands at 26.66 million. It's a 4% decrease from fiscal year 2020. The budget for fiscal year 21 includes 16 million in PS and 10 million in OTPS. The major areas where we have requested increase. The rent.
Just because we have new members, can you just we do have a new panel member, so it'll be helpful if we just go back. There are acronyms that we're using here. If we could just be explicit about what it is. Just that everybody's on a clear page of what we're discussing with these line items, specifically the page before.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to go over fiscal year 2021 budget. The fiscal year budget request for 2021 stands at 26.66 million. It's a 4% decrease from fiscal year 2020 budget. The budget for fiscal year 2021 includes the PS budget, which stands at 16 million, and the OTPS budget, which stands at 10.62 million.
What does PS and OTPS stand for?
Personal services for PS and OTPS.
Other than personnel services.
Oh,
Yeah.
services. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone just needed the acronyms.
The major areas where we have requested an increase is the building rental and overhead cost. We budgeted 968,000 in fiscal year 2020. For fiscal year 21, the amounts are 2.21 million. The IT maintenance cost increased from 3.1 million from fiscal year 20 to 4 million fiscal year 21, increase of 800,000. Telecommunication maintenance increased from 23,000 to 111,000, increase of 88,000. Furniture and other moving costs, we had budgeted 3,000 in fiscal year 20. It moves up to 151,000 in fiscal year 21 and increased by 149,000.
Any questions on these items?
This is Gary. Does this also factor in the potential of us now needed to reconfigure the space, or were these the initial projections that we had going into the new space?
These were initial projections for the new space. We still have some funds from FY20 money that we're going to use to reconfigure right now. So we think it'll cover it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And sorry, it's Natalie. Just can you explain the 878,000, the need for the increased IT maintenance costs? I assume it has something to do with the space, but can you just let us in on what that?
Sure. The increase in that amount is for Velocity, the project, upgrade our system. Next year, we'll have to pay for AWS hosting and the license agreement. So that's the increase of that money right there.
And that's assuming the system's going live, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Still on track to go live.
Sorry, not to throw that in there, but
So
that makes the assumption that everything is on track.
As of right now, still on track, yes, with the October go live date.
So Daniel, I have a question. This is Isaac. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
And by the way, Kathy, I can talk to you offline about what all the AWS and all that is, just to give you an update. But we're not on AWS yet, is my understanding. We're still with Do It?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Another question. So when you said we're still on schedule, are there any implications operationally in like that individuals are now telecommuting, that individuals that literally can't go into the building, or are there, is that space build out considered essential right now where individuals can still do this work, or is it happening remotely?
So fortunately for us, the Velocity team has had the capabilities to work remote for the last 4 years. So for that team, this hasn't been an issue at all.
There isn't any hard wiring, anything that needs to happen in that building in terms of getting it together?
Not beyond what we're already doing. Space.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide. The major spending reductions that we are budgeting in fiscal year 2021. The computer and other data processing equipment, the budget is reduced by 1.7 million. We have, which is 93% compared to fiscal year 2020. Conferences, workshop, training, see a decrease by 70% from 366,000. We brought it down to 110,000. Temp services cost decreased by 26%. The overtime cost dropped significantly from 915,000 in 20 to 628,000 in 2021. The administrative software that we budgeted in 2020 and 2021 dropped by 71%, moving to 118,685.84 in fiscal year 2021.
Daniel, this is Shannon. I have a question. So when you started off, I think the slide said hiring freeze, or did it say pay freeze? It said both?
Both, no headcount and pay freeze.
So I know that there were a couple of hires that were in the pipeline, and some of that would involve increase, right? Like pay increase. So when you say pay freeze, can you tell me a little bit about what that means?
Sure. So right now we have approval for 126 heads. Currently we have 123 heads. So we already have budgeted in the FY20 money for 126 to hire those 3 folks. So that will still go forward.
Okay. Now there were some 1 or 2 other things in the pipeline for teams that were in existence, that I know there were like some HR titles trying to be changed, et cetera, that would involve increase. So when you say pay freeze, does that mean that those moving folks into those titles won't happen as a result of this?
Oh, for folks that have passed exams for this year, that's been budgeted already.
Okay. So anything, I just want to make sure I'm clear, anything that's in the works already, you all have already taken into account and you've budgeted for, and that is like this budget that we're looking at is reflective of all of those moving pieces.
Correct.
And
Okay.
and Daniel, this is Isaac. Pay freezes, how does that play into contractual pay obligations?
That's
Some DC 37 and so on, don't we?
okay. So what I mean by pay freeze is that we're not giving any optional raises to staff or management for next year. If you have a contractual raise, then we'll have to do that by your contract,
Right.
unless the city or state decide not to do that going forward. That'd be out of our hands.
Okay, so when you say pay freeze, you just mean merit. You're not going to be giving any merit sort of increases to staff or to administration.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
I'm sorry, Daniel, this is Peter, just following up on the same questions with regards to how you were asked to reduce the budget going forward. If there are any further changes that come along from, I guess, from the mayor's office with regards to changes, would that ever reflect on what's been budgeted already? Or is that set in stone?
It could. I haven't seen a situation in my 16 years at BERS where a current budget has been asked to be cut. It's usually future, in my experience. But this is kind of unprecedented where we are right now.
Okay.
Gary, another question. So do you anticipate, obviously always in general, the largest line item on any budget is our payroll expenses. Do you foresee, and this is probably aligning with what Peter and everybody was talking about, if this is 4%, but if they're asking us to cut an additional 10%, do you anticipate that potentially having payroll, staffing implications, or you have enough wiggle room in other line items to be able to shave enough from where it won't impact your staffing?
That would be the ultimate last resort. And just on a higher level, the reason that BERS and the other funds went to corpus funding was to disalign our budgets from the city budget to protect our staff and to be able to maintain our staff. That was one of the rationales for this.
Got it.
And so Daniel, piggybacking on that one, because I had a question on this. Why are we being asked to reduce our budget? I mean, I understand we've lost money. I understand all that kind of rationale, but we're corpus funded, so we're not funded by the city. So why are we being asked to reduce?
It was actually everyone citywide, Isaac. That's a question above my pay grade.
Well, since it's above your pay grade, Sandy, do you have any insight into why we might have been asked to do this?
Sandy, if you would prefer, I can take this.
Well, okay, Lindsay, I will just add that it would be politically unwise for us to advance our expenses in the face of what's happening. And, while we are corpus funded, our administrative expenses are layered on the required contributions as calculated by the actuaries. So we are being paid for by taxpayers, ultimately. But go ahead, Lindsay.
No, that was a good summary. I think if it's helpful, we are not all pension systems, I think, as Daniel said, are being asked to take this same cut. So it would be optically weird and not great for us if all of the pension systems, who, as a reminder, have the mayor's office and the controller's office sitting on the boards, did this and BERS did not.
Right.
And
agreed.
Let me add something that in the last 3 or 4 years, we have made very substantial investments in administrative systems, and we are going to begin to see significant benefits from those implementations. We have gone through a significant amount of data correction and cleansing. We have trained up and restaffed this organization, I would say, nearly completely, So, you know, I don't expect even increased pressure on our budget to cause us horrible disabling problems. I mean, we may not be able to advance in some areas where we are hoping to advance, but I think we're in an extraordinarily good position given the last few years.
Last question from Gary. And I see that we made a cut and we actually have a number of projects well underway. Have there been any, I don't know if it's even plausible, but in general, have there been any talks about if there are opportunities for employment, you know, or like some work-related work that you guys may have, or any of the other pension funds, particularly around these areas, about prioritizing companies and individuals that have actually lost their job in this pandemic? Are there any ways that we're factoring that in on any future collaborations when it comes to employment?
I'm not sure what you mean.
So, you know, I'm a contract worker. I lost my job because there hasn't been any work. You have a new contract that may be opening up. You know, when you're thinking about wanting to bring somebody in, are we considering, hey, do we just give it to a status quo company that has been working this whole time, or a company that's actually lost a job for the last 3 months is looking for additional work?
Well, we'd have to do an RFP, and it's something we could consider.
Okay. I'm just putting that out there again because we're not, obviously there's a hiring freeze and everything else, but I think just, you know, from a morale and citywide standpoint, if we are doing that, that would be something I would love to explore about how do we prioritize those folks in the process.
Sure.
I have, it's Natalie, I have just a question about the FY 2020 budget. There were some significant cost savings when we canceled the consulting contract, for example. Has that money just been reallocated? So, or is there a possibility that FY 2020 might wind up with something left?
So for that consultant savings in FY20, that's in the capital budget. That's about $1 million sitting in the capital budget. This is not impacting on this budget here, on the operating budget.
But your point is well taken, Natalie. We will be not spending as much as we originally planned.
And we are allowed to hold on to that.
Correct.
Okay.
That rolls over until the project is complete.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kathy. I see that overtime wasn't cut completely. Does this number reflect a certain percentage cut, and how is it determined when overtime is applicable?
Say that last part again.
What are the considerations when you look at overtime and when it's applicable?
Sure. So we had a significant amount of operational backlogs in the last few years that have been reduced significantly in the last 18 months. So that was really a consideration for ramping up the overtime to drive down those backlogs. Also, we had onboarding of 25 new staff in the last 24 months. So some of that was also done with training and overtime. And as those staff have been onboarding, as backlogs have gone down and looking to make cuts, overtime was the place that we looked at to cut. Any other questions? All right. So the potential, impact, I kind of just talked about, backlogs. We really worked down the backlog significantly with reducing our temps and overtimes. It's a potential that could creep back up. With having less temps to assist, maybe staff burnout could be an issue. The pre-COVID budget, we were going to ask for increased headcount for one unit that's going to do research on member data. There's some gaps in that right now that cause a lot of problems with our members. I know Shannon mentioned a few months ago, we had 2 members that were given incorrect retirement estimates because their data was incorrect in the system, and you want to create a new unit, do this research ahead of retirement, so there'll be less impact. So there could be some increased member satisfaction on wait times for call centers, no headcount there, and also wait time to get an appointment, which are now not allowing any more walk-ins. We've cut training budget significantly, as well as training for trustees. So that's an issue. And the auditors have access to higher headcount in IT and an internal audit that we will not be able to do because of no headcount increases. So those are some of the few potential impacts. Any other questions?
Daniel, it's Peter. Just on the issue of the members having to make appointments, obviously, you know, in this new reality that we're living in right now, are they limiting to so many a day? How is that working as far as being able to service the members? Or is it only being done in another method right now?
Well, it's pre and post go live velocity. So once velocity rolls out in October, we'll have an actual more robust member self-service, and they'll be able to get appointments directly from the BERS website, member self-service, that she can't do now. So basically, each counselor has right now 4 appointments per day, and they would save 2 hours for any walk-ins. So basically, it's a wash. Now they do 6 appointments per day. So there's been no reduction in the hours that our council can see members.
Okay, so you're not seeing a backlog at this point?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's Natalie again. If we go ahead and approve the CARES Act benefits that will be extended to our members, could that potentially yield a really big rush of transactions?
I don't think it will, do that. Members have been calling and inquiring about different options they can do already. I don't foresee that. Anything to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, Natalie, based on the interest that we've seen so far, there is a certain amount of interest, but they're not beating down the doors. I think it's more about helping certain people who really need it at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, so next month we'll vote on this budget. Thank you all.
Great. Are there any other questions? And obviously, I'm sure the board would be happy to take questions between now and when we vote in May.
Yes, please. The budget's on the SharePoint. If you have any questions, email me or Chicho or Sandy.
Okay, great. All right, the next item on the agenda is calendar item 19, adoption of relief pursuant to the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Can I have a motion to consider, please?
Motion.
Oh, thank you, Donald. Second?
I second. This is Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. Alex, can you tell us about this resolution, please?
Certainly. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, was signed into law on March 27, 2020 to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic by providing economic relief to individuals, businesses, and government organizations. The terms of the CARES Act offer pension plans the option to provide relief to plan participants in certain specified ways. The board is requested to authorize all relief made available to retirement plans. The relief includes the following: a distribution right of up to $100,000, not to exceed the participant's account balance from the plan that is subject to special tax relief, an increase in the loan limit under Section 72P of the Internal Revenue Code to permit loans of up to $100,000 or 100% of the participant's account balance, if less, suspension of loan payments for up to 1 year, if they so desire, suspension of 2020 required minimum distributions from the TDA program.
Thank you, Alex. Are there any questions? We are going to call each trustee's name. Please indicate whether you are in favor, oppose, or abstain, and please remember to turn off your mute. Alex?
Peter Calandrella.
I approve.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Thank you. Janelle Chacon.
Approve.
Thank you. April Chapman.
In favor.
Alex, she said in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. In favor.
Hi, thank you, April. Deb Dillingham.
In favor?
Natalie Green Giles.
In favor.
Michael Kraft.
In favor.
Vanessa Leung.
In favor.
Gary Lennon.
In favor.
John Maderick.
In favor.
Donald Nesbitt.
I approve.
Lindsay Oates.
In favor.
Kathy Park Price.
Approve.
And Shannon Waite.
In favor.
Thank you all.
Thank you. The vote carries. The next item on the agenda is calendar item 20, authorization to amend an agreement with Baker Tilly, Vercrow and Kraus, LLP. Can I have a motion to consider?
To consider.
Thank you, Natalie. Is there a second?
A second.
Janelle, second.
Thank you, Janelle. Aday, can you please tell us about this resolution?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a resolution to extend the current contract with Baker Tilly to provide internal audit services in a co-source capacity with BERS internal audit for an additional 12 months to end in May of 2021. As the current engagement progressed, we identified the need for additional services to ensure proper audit coverage within BERS, and also to ensure that the internal audit plan can be effectively executed. Baker Tilly will support the first year's internal audit plan, and I strongly need the support as I'm currently the only staff member within the department, as you may know. We are requesting that the board approve an extension of these services that are currently underway under the existing agreement. This will not require a new RFP or bid, as the additional services are within scope of the current engagement. The total cost of this extension is $256,500. It will include 135 hours of work at a blended rate of $190 per hour.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Let's vote. When your name is called, please state your vote, and please remember to unmute your microphone. Alex?
Unmute my microphone too. Peter Calandrella.
I approve.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Thank you. Janelle Chacon.
Approve.
Thank you. April Chapman.
Approve.
Thank you. Deb Dillingham.
In favor?
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles.
In favor.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
Approve.
Thank you. Vanessa Leung.
In favor? Favor. In favor?
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
Approved.
Thank you. John Maderick.
Approved.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
Approve.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
Approved.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price.
Approve.
Thank you. And Shannon Waite.
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, the vote carries. The next item on our agenda is calendar item 21, amendment to the investment policy statement of the Board of Education retirement system. Can I have a motion to consider, please? Thank you, Gary. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Antonio, can you please tell us about this resolution? Are you there, Antonio?
Muted.
You're on mute.
He's muted right now.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I put up my, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
My screen, you couldn't see the muting. First, wanted to introduce myself to board member Kathy. Hi, I'm Antonio Rodriguez. I'm the Director of Investment Strategy. And, the revision, as kind of Sandy said earlier, of the investment policy statement really sets the guides and guidelines for how staff, how the Bureau of Asset Management, the Comptroller's Office, and your consultants implement the investment plan for our members. This was really a effort that's been kind of ongoing since late summer, early fall. I can't thank enough my team, Evelise Vargas, who led the cleanup effort for the investment policy statement, Keyshawn Christoph, who did a lot with the IPS committee and agenda, the folks on the IPS committee who spent time going through the document. So thank you all for all of your work. So to kind of go through the kind of first, why did we end up going through this exercise in the first place? The revision of the IPS is really consistent with the Funston group, who did an analysis of the 5 systems investment programs. And from our perspective, everything that we're doing as we're building this department is keyed in on the Funston group report. I think this new document will be a better accountability document from the board to staff and advisors. It's where you hold us and consultants accountable. And actually, before I go on, I also want to thank our consultants, Siegel Marco and Axia, who also helped in putting this together. So everybody was sent in the packet the IPS for review. The major changes: we were explicit in the delineation of our duties and responsibilities, so the creation of our strategy department, and also we divided responsibilities between what the full board does and then what the executive committee, acting as investment committee, what their responsibilities are. We shortened the length of the document while also enhancing its accuracy. There was a lot of outdated information and redundancies that meaningfully streamlined the document and made it easier for folks to go through. We created an investment purpose and objectives and investment policy and strategy section. It's at the beginning of the document. It outlines why and how we make our recommendations and decisions. So if a decision doesn't match up or kind of is incongruent with those, then you should ask questions on why this recommendation is coming to you. We reviewed the asset allocation section. Asset allocation is really the forefront how we invest in assets. We added a new asset allocation and rebalancing ranges, and we created guidelines for a new asset class, the opportunistic fixed income asset class, which we will talk about shortly. We also outlined performance and reporting, the type and frequency of reporting that the board will receive within the document. I think for you all's kind of work, the one important aspect is the delineation of the roles and responsibilities of the Board of Trustees and the Executive Committee. So the Board of Trustees, what we really wanted to do is, given all that you have to do, everything that we have to discuss, be able to have a subcommittee that is able to discuss kind of in more detail different investment items. So the Board of Trustees would establish and adopt policies like this, approve and adopt the major policies like asset allocation, annual implementation plans, approve ultimately investment manager selection, and select consultants to implement these strategies. The executive committee, which will be able to meet on a more frequent basis potentially, would really have the detailed discussions on these particular issues. They would then be able to give recommendations, particularly on things like investment managers, to the board under a certain dollar threshold. And so the board would still have be able to approve all items, but because the committee has had the ability to really dive into some of these items, we think that this will kind of both streamline our time and give, I think, the board adequate, feeling that these have been reviewed by the trustees. They will also act as a standing committee, so any type of board request or any subcommittee, we have a committee that's already there. We have upcoming discussions. So the document that we sent to you to approve today, just know that we're never going to stand pat with that. We're always going to try and do improvements as we go forward. And we see 3 areas where we'll continue to have discussions. The first is the rebalancing policy, discussion of our rebalancing ranges and how we implement them. Diversity and inclusion policy, how do we develop metrics, reports, and targets for our diversity and inclusion in manager research and selection? And then reformatting our asset class guidelines to mimic the ones that we've created. Into the first here, because the second thing I wanted to show you all is the actual document, and I would like the committee to actually chime in and kind of talk about their views on the document, kind of what we walk through as I upload the next file.
Well, do you want to it's Natalie. Do you want to speak generally about the process, or can I just start by saying this process was long, iterative, and painful at times, and the end product is masterful compared to where we were, 4 months ago. I appreciate both the fact that it is captured everything that we talked about and debated along the way, and you documented the process so that you have left this whole whatever, it's a living document for sure at this point. It's flexible, it reflects our values, but it's also mindful that an entirely new board is going to come on in 18 months. So I think that, I think it's as good as it could possibly be. I'm really cannot say enough about the work you guys did on this, and Keyshawn's memo documenting that process is equally impressive. So that's my 2 cents. A lot of what you see here, to my other committee members can chime in as well, but a lot of this sort of clean and simple and straightforward language came about from hours and hours and hours of discussion.
Yeah, this is Isaac. I would agree. In fact, we get a test run on a new board member to see how well it is from your perspective, Kathy, as you look this over later.
Absolutely.
We keep in mind that we're here for another year, maybe, and a year and a half. And the BERS board is not like other boards, except for Donald and John, who will be here because they're elected. We're appointed, and so we're in and out. And historically, I think the BERS staff has felt that the boards that we're one of the more involved boards, and but that may not be the case going forward. So we want something that board members can easily understand.
Absolutely.
And I just wanted to add, I echo both Natalie and Isaac's sentiments, and just also highlight that last point that Isaac hit on was one of the reasons why Antonio and his team was so intentional about the language, specifically when it comes to a reflection of values that is representative of our members. And I'm really very, I told Antonio when he reviewed the red line document with me, I was like, I could cry, because I think that the product that has been produced is really very helpful. It provides clarity, and it provides a level of emphasis that I am certain none of us got when we were appointed, with regard to our fiduciary responsibilities and the significance and honestly what we owe our members. And so I'm really happy that we were able to do that. Good job, Antonio and team.
I just wanted, am I on here? I can't tell.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to echo really about flexibility and a policy that represents our values, and that there were many discussions on how to give Antonio and team the flexibility to do their jobs, and yet at the end of the day, it is the board members who make the ultimate decisions, and how we reach a balance through our policy so that we could accomplish our goals internally and at the board level. So thank you, Antonio, for leading this off.
I can't say enough. My team and the committee did a ton of this work.
I'll add to it as well. This Donald Nesbitt, I'll add to it. Well, first, thank you, Antonio and team, for the hard work that you put into this. I gotta say, even on some things where people didn't, we came to common ground. Everyone's opinion was taken into consideration, and that's important. We're putting a document together, but we looked at accountability as being number one. Us being accountable as trustees, but also the staff being accountable to the members who we serve. And we took all of those considerations in the decisions that we made with this. But like Natalie said earlier, it was a long process. but we aligned our schedules to make sure that we get this important document done and presented to the entire board. And so thanks again for all of the committee members and also Antonio and his team.
You know, and this is the last thing I'll say on that before, you know, kick it off to maybe before a vote, is that within this document, we wanted to make sure we put in the accountability metrics. And so our next phase, in addition to the things that we put outlined in the report, are here are the things that we need to produce for you on a performance report, which you will see later today, which is still in progress, but I wanted to get your feedback. And with regard to all the qualitative reporting, Evelise Vargas is leading up that next phase of implementation of our system. And so that will really, once that kind of goes online, we'll be able to do even more for you. And, you know, like I said, if we're not holding ourselves to this document, then, you know, that's really kind of what you guys call us out on and call out the consultants. But, you know, we're going to make sure we always adhere to this policy. And when there are areas of disagreement, we're going to look to the policy and see what it says. So, yeah, so that's all I have. If there's any other questions, otherwise, I'll kick it to you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Antonio. Any other questions? Wonderful. Okay, thank you all. Let's vote. Alex, and please remember to take your vote or your computer off mute.
Peter Calandrella.
I agree.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Thank you. Janelle Chacon.
In favor. In favor.
Thank you. Thank you. April Chapman.
In favor.
Thank you. Deb Dillingham.
In favor.
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles.
Favor.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
In favor.
Thank you. Vanessa Leon.
In favor.
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
In favor.
Thank you. John Maderick.
In favor.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
I approve.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
In favor.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price.
In favor.
Thank you. Shannon Waite.
In favor.
Thank you.
Great, the vote carries. Congratulations to the board for completing this really important project. So wonderful to see it actually be completed. Thank you all. The next item on our agenda is calendar item 22, revision of the asset allocation policy for the investments of the Board of Education retirement system. May I have a motion to consider, please? Thank you, John. Second?
Considered.
Thank you, Gary. Antonio, can you please tell us about this resolution?
Absolutely. So this, in addition to the investment policy statement, the asset allocation is another incredibly important decision that the board makes periodically to decide how the assets of the plan will be invested. I can share my screen, or I don't know if you want to share your screen on this for the presentation.
Okay.
Let me know. You see it? Is it a good size? Can you see it?
Got it.
All right, perfect.
All right. And as Antonio said, when he went through the investment policy statement itself, the actual document has as one of the core elements the actual asset allocation for the BERS plan assets. And that probably heard me say before, and some of this is repetitive of what we talked about in our January offsite, that that asset allocation, the amount we decide to put in stocks and bonds, new asset class of opportunistic fixed income, those kind of decisions are the key decision by the trustees that will allow us to measure and kind of benchmark the risk and return of the total fund. So I'm not going to, you're going to see here is not dramatic changes from where the asset allocation, yes, thank you, is not dramatic changes from where the asset allocation was last year. I'll point out a couple, or I'm sorry, the prior year. Remember, I should also say up front, this is about a 3 to 5 year cycle that we look at this asset allocation. And one of the interesting things, quite honestly, and also one of the reasons that this is delayed a little bit beyond when we probably would have liked to have it approved right after our January meeting, was the market dislocations that happened in end of February and into March and April. Two of the systems teachers and I believe night that had already approved their asset allocation are now going back and looking, as we did in this one, with updated 2020 assumptions and also updates to kind of the risk orientation of the fund. So with that in mind, the directional aspects of that we
Mike,
Sorry, somebody
I'm
needs
so sorry, but
mute.
someone is not muted and it's competing against the one good ear that I have that I hear 100% out of.
All right, everyone go to mute. Is that me? The better. All right, so the what you see on page 2, especially at the top, are 3 key takeaways that as trustees, I think will give you some comfort, because this asset allocation is indeed a long-term perspective. While we take into account, and we're certainly cognizant of current market losses on the equity side, the incredibly low interest rates right now. These are some things that we have been concerned about as we went into 2020, and they've really we've got it a lot faster than we thought we would perhaps. But in terms of our long-term perspective, you should know that our expected compound return, so the average annual return net the average annual return that we expect, it's kind of the per year level annual return over a 20-year horizon, which we think is appropriate for planning for a pension plan such as this, is 7.2%. The 10-year number, a little bit lower, 6.6%, and that's reflecting kind of what we've seen here, that on any shorter term basis, we expect more volatility. We certainly expect there to be losses in the equity market. We expect volatile interest rates. And what we've kept our eye on then is that that risk level of our assets, in addition to that long-term 7.2% return. And when you divide that return by the risk level, the ratio we keep in mind is the Sharpe ratio. That's kind of the return per unit of risk we've taken. And what we've shown in this analysis is we've actually improved that return to risk level. So we think we hit a number of the key points that we care about as investment consultant, and that you as trustees should stay focused on with that long-term expectation for the fund. Now, down at the bottom of the page are the things that we did at kind of the more granular level to both, and this was in discussion with BAM, in discussion with internal staff. So we wanted to do things that we thought better rewarded the risk return ratio of the fund, and then it helped us to be more oriented toward the asset classes that we thought would do better over that, both near and long term. So first one we talked about, we're looking for risk mitigation strategies. We're looking for opportunistic equity. Those are not elements specifically stated in the investment policy statement, but we want you to know that we're going to include those as we go through these other allocations, which are specifically in the policy statement. The first one, expectation over the near term, and certainly even over the 10 and 20-year period, is that inflation is going to be lower. We believe the Federal Reserve Bank does a very adequate job of keeping inflation low. They've done things with their policies to reduce inflation. We've seen tremendous drops in inflation this year with commodity prices coming on. So we've decreased the Treasury inflation protected security allocation, TIPS, but we still have a bit of an inflation hedge, albeit with asset classes that we think can grow better. Real estate, infrastructure, which invests in things like toll roads and airports. Shouldn't mention airports right now, but the kinds of things that produce regulated income for our fund is our shift to try to get some inflation hedge while still participating in better growth markets. Interestingly, and this is directly relevant now, we had expected when we went into this, and as we went through our review, we've reduced non-U.S. international stocks and emerging market stocks in favor of what we're calling that opportunistic fixed income or private credit. So we're taking some money out of the non-U.S. investments where the economies haven't been growing as well as the U.S., emerging markets, which are heavily commodity driven and also affected by a rising dollar, which we expect. And we're shifting it over into a more private credit, which more is focused on a fixed income kind of return, albeit by lending to companies that take slightly more risk in the marketplace. So you're going to see that shift when we look at this specific. And it's one of those items that as we moved into this environment with problematic U.S. equity returns, problematic non-U.S. equity returns, and a shift to rewarding credit, but honestly, whether it's investment grade or in the next category, you can see we're also increasing high yield. We thought that was an advantageous way to increase the income of the fund reduce the volatility of the fund compared to being in non-US stocks. And as we said up at the outset, still keep our Sharpe ratio, our return per unit of risk, improving. Antonio, why don't we jump to the next page? I think we've talked about currency hedging before, and we're not including that. It wasn't included before. So really in this approval, the recommendation and the item that you'll really see in our investment policy statement is that far right column that where we kind of break out the asset allocation into those more granular levels of return. And if you slide your finger and compare what our current target is to the recommended, when I make my comments about changes, that's really what I'm focused on. The middle column includes what we call placeholders, which are a bit of a distortion, but I can give you the easiest example to look at for that. And that is that right now, let's slide your finger down to the US equity. Right now, while the US equity allocation is 30% as a target, because we aren't invested fully in private equity and some of the other asset classes, because we haven't been able to maintain the pacing scale that we'd like, we hold a placeholder in the U.S. equity of a little bit extra in our equity index funds to kind of keep dry powder or keep the assets available when indeed a private equity comes through. So that's the reason for the middle column. I'm going to ignore it from now on. The three key takeaways here I want you to focus on. First, I've already mentioned inflation-linked bond tips. That's the second line down. That's going from a current target of 4 to a recommended of 3. I gotta tell you, not a major change in percentage terms, but it's reflective of that philosophy we have of focusing a little more on high risk per unit of return assets. High return per unit of risk assets. The next one is that equity line I already pointed out. We're actually taking U.S. equities up a bit from 30 to 31, and right below that, we're taking international equities down from an aggregate of developed plus emerging of 20 to about 16. So the private equity, for example, stays the same. Real estate largely stays the same. So we're really trying to focus in on assets that will help the plan to grow better. You see that best in a way that we've broken it out in the next block down, where growth assets, that is our equities and private equity and those kind of asset classes, have gone from 59% up to 60%. Income assets, the core fixed income has really stayed the same. Where we've really made the shift is in credit. That opportunistic fixed income / private credit is going from 8 up to 13%. A big increase. We've had a lot of discussions about BAM, about what we could actually achieve there. We really think that's an achievable asset class and achievable investable class. And in fact, at our May meeting, we'll be bringing back ideas on how to expand that. So the takeaway from here, you're approving that right-hand column as part of the investment policy statement. The stats that we show in terms of the breakout and the Sharpe ratio in particular at the bottom are what I would focus on, saying not only have we tilted the fund towards ways that we think will better reward the fund from a total return point of view, maintaining that 7.2% average annual return, but also we've improved the return per unit of risk taken. And I'll pause there. I know I got speed talking on. On the next page is I think we handed this out, but all they really show are some of the underlying assumptions that went into this recommendation. I don't know. Is this something you want to take a vote on? Or I think this is already in the investment policy statement, right, Antonio?
It is, but we do want to take a vote on this.
Can I ask a question, Mike? It's Natalie. In the pie in the sky world that the basket clause legislation that we have all signed on to increase the basket clause allocation, would we be respinning this in the optimizer at any point in the next 2 years then?
With this allocation, we are tied up against the existing basket clause. And one of our concerns is that if the U.S. equity market would continue to decline, we would indeed, because the basket clause assets are less responsive to U.S. equity market declines, we might actually be over the current amount. So my short answer to your question is we left ourselves a little room, not a lot. If we were to raise it, that would be great.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions?
No, I don't have a question. This is Shannon. I just wanted to say, when Antonio first briefed me and he started talking about the private opportunistic equity, made my eyebrows raised. However, I just want to say that just goes back to our last vote. And that's why it's so important that we had that IPS, because in that we articulate what we will do and what we won't do. And you, Mike, are incredibly ethical, and you never would have recommended something that goes against the general feeling, I think. But I love that we concretized it in that IPS.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's vote. Please indicate whether you approve, oppose, or abstain when your name is called, and don't forget to take your mic off of mute, please. Alex?
Peter Calandrella.
Approved.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Thank you. Janil Chacon.
Approve.
Thank you. April Chapman.
Approve.
Thank you. Deborah Dillingham.
In favor?
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles.
I approve.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
Approve.
Thank you. Vanessa Leon.
Sorry. In favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
Approved.
Thank you. John Maderick.
I approve.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
Approve.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
Approve.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price.
Approve.
Thank you. And Shannon Waite.
I approve.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. The vote carries. The next item on the agenda is an investment item that belongs in executive session. Can I have a motion to enter executive session, please? Thank you, Deb. Second, Gary. Alex?
Okay. Peter Calandrella.
This is to move into executive session, right?
Yes, that's right. This is, yes. Thank you.
Approved. Yes.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
Yeah, in favor.
Janil Chacon.
In favor.
Thank you. April Chapman.
In favor.
Thank you. Deborah Dillingham.
In favor?
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles.
Favor.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
In favor.
Thank you. Vanessa Leon.
In favor.
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
In favor.
Thank you. John Maderick.
I approve.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
Approve.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
Approved.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price.
In favor.
Thank you. And Shannon Waite.
I approve.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. The vote carries. Alex, can you report out the board's actions in executive session, please?
Certainly. In executive session, the board voted to approve calendar item 23, that is authorization to the controller of the City of New York to commit a portion of the fixed income portfolio of the Board of Education retirement system.
Thank you, Alex. The next item on the agenda is calendar item 24, performance reporting. Can I have a motion to discuss, please?
Gary.
Approve.
Great, thank you, Deb and Gary. Thank you, Antonio. Go ahead.
All right, and we'll do this quickly, but we worked diligently to try and get this out to you all. We sent it out this afternoon. This is the canned reports from the CAISA system. We went online, today. We going back to 2014. Now we'll be able to have all of our kind of performance and analytics within the system. Just so you know, as of March 31st, 2020, the fund is down a bit, a lot, actually 10.7%, versus what I call the reference portfolio, which is a 70%, 30% stock bond split of 14.1%. So you all can read the numbers. The bar on your left is our portfolio. The bar on the right is our reference portfolio benchmark. I think everybody knows kind of what has happened in markets, but all this kind of shows is the benefits of having a diversified portfolio. As you can see, last year We were up less than just a pure stock bond portfolio, but we're on the flip side, as markets go down, we actually have a bit of a cushion. The important thing there is really where we're at. Our current market value is $6.14 billion as of the end of last month. That's down from a high of $6.8 billion at December 31st. So, about $700 million, more than $700 million decline over the last quarter. That being said, it's tough, and obviously it's difficult. But I think that really what we can also say is that we're essentially at where we were at the middle of 2019, really. So we're at $6.4 billion in the middle of 2019. This report that we have, and it said, I would like to get your feedback. This is where we currently stand on our asset allocation. So about 33% of our assets are in the public fixed income markets, about 9% in real assets, so that's real estate and in infrastructure, 7.9% in private equity, and about 48% in public equities. And then residual amounts in our economically targeted investments and cash. So one other thing I just wanted to talk to you all about is when we think about rebalancing and policy, kind of where we are with regard to what the policy the board currently has set. This chart right here kind of says how the difference between where we currently are on the left side and our policy weights on the right side. And as you can see, everything is almost around in line with policy except for core fixed income. So we are about 9% above our policy target, and that has been entirely because our treasury portfolio has increased greatly as equities have gone down. It has acted kind of as that ballast to our portfolio. Without it, we would be down a lot more. But that is something that we are now currently out of policy. And so we're talking with the Bureau, and once we've set our asset allocation, we'll rebalance back, and this probably selling off, kind of some of our treasuries and rebalancing into some of the other asset classes. So this report, as we design it, is going to be really important because it's going to be your way to measure whether or not we're in balance or out of balance. And so when you see something as high as our fixed income balance, that's something that you all should definitely question and say, kind of, what are we doing to get back within policy? And as we discuss the rebalancing ranges, that will be kind of really important to see how much leeway you want to have to get away from policy. The only other thing I'll show today is actually, this is just a chart of our historical holdings from about this is over 5 years. So this kind of gives us our net asset values over time with our latest net asset value as of the end of the quarter. As you can see, we had enormous run towards the end of December of 2018 through the next year, and then through the quarter we've seen a pretty big dip. But we were able to kind of show you our steady progressions and our steady growth over time. This is something that we're working on how to best present all of this. But this right here, this report is really our kind of our way to figure out what is best and how you want to see information when it comes to in our investment performance. Understanding that within the system, we're at about we can go back to January of 2014. And so right now we have 6 years of data within it, and that'll continue to grow, but we can do analysis over that time period. And so, yeah, so those are the majors. I didn't want to go too much into it because our next item is to make sure that we are customizing these reports to make sure that they're answering questions you all might have about our investment performance. That, a quarterly performance, we're down, quite a bit, but our fixed income portfolio has really kind of acted as a ballast to us during this time.
Antonio, it's Michael.
Yes.
Now that the IPS has been approved, will the asset classes that this report show correspond to the asset classes we have in that document? And then will there?
What I wanted to do was really kind of group. So core fixed income is all kind of grouped together. As Michael Wright said during his asset allocation presentation, we want to go back to a core kind of a market, both from a sector weighting perspective and a duration perspective when it comes to core fixed income. So what is kind of themed as classical core fixed income, we already put that into the system to correspond with our asset allocation. So this is actually more corresponding with where we're going than where we were. The The only thing we have to do is update the numbers, but the categories are where they need to be.
Thank you.
Your question, Michael?
I think so. I guess I want to take a look at the actual demo and figure it out for myself.
We'll talk about that next. Any other questions on the performance? I said, we'll love your feedback. Obviously, we have a lot to change with legends and things like that, but please let us know what your thoughts are on and how you want the information to be presented.
And Senator, this is Gary. I'm sending you an email out afterwards, but so that we don't spend time on here, I would love just a call one-on-one to go through this in a little bit more depth, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure we do that.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. The next item on the agenda is calendar item 25, note on Chiasia. Can I have a motion to discuss, please? Chiesa. Chiesa is how you say it, right? Thank you, John. Second? I can't see anyone, so.
Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Antonio, please.
Yes, and this will be quick just to let you all know, like I said, we are going live with our system as of today. So if you haven't already checked your school's nyc.gov address, we are sending out your logins to the investment book of record system. And so we did our final test run this morning through the afternoon. And our returns and net asset values are all in line. And so all the board members who are on the board are currently getting the system. Kathy, I will make sure that you get a login as well. I'll work with it right after this call. But you all now will have access to this system to be able to look at our performance, look at our holdings.
I know it's Mike. How you doing? Fine. Sorry to make you stay. That other call just went on longer than I thought.
Mike, we can still hear you.
Yeah, no, it's good now. It's good now. Yeah, the board was saying, hey, they were 15 minutes over, and everybody was hanging up, so we were good.
So on that note,
hey, very good, Mike.
Somebody
sure.
the host mute him?
I'm
Or
not the host.
something embarrassing?
You mute him. Anyway, so just so you all know, we had to use your school's address because need to be connected to an organization. But just to let you all know that you all now have access to this system, you can see your returns and risk and run different analysis on your own. We will be setting up times, and they have a huge knowledge kind of documents and kind of walkthrough for anybody who wants to look at the system. But in addition, we will be setting up times to go through with the Chiesa team. Like I said before, they are actually based 2 doors down from us at 77 Water Street, which right now doesn't really help at all, but will in the future. So let me know. I will be sending out an email. Let me know. We can run as many of these demonstrations as you would like. But check your schools.nyc.gov email address. You should be getting, and it'll come ready-made with a dashboard that shows our performance, our asset allocation, and a few other items that we've set up for you already to go in. But it's been a long time coming. We know we've been pushing to make sure that everybody had access to the system, and so we are happy to say that it is now online.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thanks, Antonio. I'm all set up. Thank you.
Good work.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Antonio. The next item on the agenda is calendar item 26, adoption of the Actuaries determination for fiscal year 2020 employee contribution to BERS. Can I have a motion to consider, please? Thank you, Deb. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Sherry, can you please tell us about this resolution?
Yes. Can you guys hear me, and can you see the resolution on the screen?
We can hear you. I can't see the resolution.
Okay, hold on.
Can't see it yet.
How about now?
It says it's starting. There it is.
Okay. So in front of you should be the final fiscal year 20 employer contributions. It represents the amount of $257.5 million, and this was a decrease from the preliminary fiscal year 20 contributions of 15.2 million. This decrease was due to mainly the drop in the actual value of assets methodology that I have spoken to about to this board in the last couple of months. So in front of you, you'll see this resolution, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them right now.
Any questions for Sherry? Okay, thank you, Sherry. Let's vote. When your name is called, please indicate whether you approve or oppose or abstain. Alex, please go ahead.
Peter Calandrella.
Approved.
Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Janelle Chacon.
Approved.
Thank you. April Chapman.
Approved.
Thank you. Deborah Dillingham. Thank you. Natalie Green Giles.
Approve.
Thank you. Michael Kraft.
Approved.
Thank you. Vanessa Leong.
In favor?
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
Approved.
Thank you. John Maderick.
Approved.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
Approved.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
Approved.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price. Thank you. And Shannon Waite.
Shannon Waite had to jump off to join the next meeting.
Okay.
The final item, thank you, the vote carries. The final item on our agenda is the fiscal note report from the actuary. Can I have a motion to discuss, please?
Motion.
Thank you, John. Second?
Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Sherry, can you tell us about this report, please?
Sure thing. And is the report showing on your end?
Yes.
Okay. So in the last month, there were 4 fiscal notes that were issued by my office that pertain to the Board of Education retirement system. The first one had to do with retirees going back to public service for the declared public health crisis. And previously, when they went back to employment, there was a cap on their earnings, so that if they reached that cap, their retirement benefit and their pension would be suspended thereafter. This bill, this legislative bill, was to lift that, and the fiscal note was to cost that out. The cost was basically a zero cost because these workers, these retirees, would not have come back. It was assumed that they would not have come back to work in public sector absent the public health crisis. So this would have been paying their pension benefits regardless. So there's no additional cost. The second fiscal note had to do with the basket clause, increasing the foreign investment cap from 10% to 30%. That was also expected to have either minimal or no impact on the employer contributions. Then thirdly, the fiscal note had to do with posting board meeting minutes onto the website. Again, this was costed out as de minimis, just for the cost of uploading the minutes onto the retirement system's website. Did not have a significant cost to the employer contribution. Do keep in mind that the employer contribution has several components to it, one of which is administrative cost. But because this was negligible, it was costed out to be de minimis. And then lastly, the fourth fiscal note had to do with exempting certain titles from being physically taxing so that they would not be subject to some of the higher cost. They would get a refund on their additional contributions in the BERS age 57 retirement program. This was costed out for the population, and the increase in employer contribution was calculated to be approximately $26,000. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions for Sherry? Okay, thank you, Sherry. Okay, that concludes the agenda for this meeting. The next regular meeting of the BERS Board of Trustees is scheduled for Wednesday, May 20th. Details to follow, but soon we will be online again. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you. Thank you. Second, thank you. Alex, close us out.
Peter Calandrella.
In favor.
Thank you. Isaac Carmignani.
In favor.
Thank you. Janelle Chacon.
In favor.
Thank you. April Chapman.
We may have lost some folks to join the next call. So.
Okay, yes. Deborah Dillingham.
In favor.
Thank you. Natalie Green Giles. Thank you. Michael Kraft.
Excuse me, in favor.
Thank you. Vanessa Leon.
In favor?
Thank you. Gary Lennon.
In favor.
Thank you. John Maderick.
In favor.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt.
In favor.
Thank you. Lindsay Oates.
In favor.
Thank you. Kathy Park Price. Thank you very much. And I think Shannon Waite has stepped away, so that's everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. We are adjourned. Be safe and healthy, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Be well, everyone.
All right, everybody,
Stay
do
safe.
well.
Have a good evening.
See you soon.